Construction Nation. Welcome to Lead with Trust. I'm Sue Dyer, and I've been on a 3-decade journey to figure out how to make sure our construction projects succeed and produce some extraordinary results. My trusted leader journey has led me to work on over 4,000 construction projects worth over $180 billion. In this podcast, I'm here to teach you everything I've learned. One thing I know is that it starts with the leaders of the businesses and organizations that come together to build a project. If that's you, let's get going. Hey, Construction Nation, we are so privileged today to have Kaitlin Frank with us. Welcome, Kaitlin.
Thank you for having me.
So we are continuing our series on bringing women into construction, and I am so excited to learn more about you and your path and your lessons learned and insights as you have been working out in the field and now have moved on. So I want to learn about all of that.
Yeah, gosh, it's been a fun, wild ride. We'll go all the way back, I guess. I started out my career back in Boston, and I did my undergrad in architecture, thought I wanted to become an architect, realized I had these, I call them nightmares of zooming in and out of CAD, and saw that sitting at a desk wasn't for me. I knew that I would learn this industry the best if I was out in the field. At the time, there was no one else out in the field that looked like me. There was no other females that I had looked up to, and it wasn't until about 2 years ago that I actually met other female superintendents that were in the same position. But got my master's in construction management, worked in Boston for a little while, and then decided that I no longer enjoyed the cold winters in construction out in Boston and found my way to San Francisco. I had a goal of 30 million by 30 by 30, ran some large commercial construction projects, ended up ending with a nice Amazon project in San Francisco, and decided I was going to hang up my hard hat for a little while. I truly never planned on leaving the industry as far as actual commercial construction, but I found my way into technology and thought I could impact a larger group in the industry that way.
That's so exciting. So tell us a little bit. I know now you're the CEO of eMOD. So tell us about eMOD and what it does and what you're trying to do and impact.
So when I was in the field, it didn't matter what contractor I was working for. I worked for 2 mid-sized general contractors and one of the ENR top, 400 or 4, I guess, at this point, contractors. And safety always was commonly spoken about and very important to the company culture. But the reality of deploying it into the field, it was very administrative and check the box. I'm the daughter of a contractor, and I never wanted to make that or get that phone call that someone, my dad wasn't going to come home. And I never, as a superintendent, I never wanted to make that phone call. And so when safety came to me, it was always very important that safety was always first and it was done well. And I saw the processes that were put out there. And honestly, as a superintendent, we were set up to fail. The processes were unrealistic and they checked the box, but they weren't actually protecting the field crews. So at eMOD, what we're trying to do is we're focusing in on the people that are actually doing the work. How do we get them more involved? Do they understand the hazards? Do they understand what they're signing off on? And trying to be more proactive in that sense instead of just documenting what's already occurred out there and be reacting to a situation.
I think that's true with safety. It is more reactionary. Although I do see sometimes, like one of the contractors that you worked for, I know they do a lot of potential hazard, and they react to that. But it's still a lot of mostly reactionary. And so when something happens, then everyone stands down and you begin to look at, well, what happened and how do we prevent this from happening? Yeah. So how does eMOD do that?
So one of the things that I struggled with as as a superintendent was to get the subcontractors or trade partners to submit quality, we call them pre-task plans. I know they have a million names in the industry, but the daily hazard assessments that are actually quality. And what I learned in the field was that a lot of our field crews, English may not be their first language. They may not be comfortable with their spelling and their handwriting. We're handing them a blank form. That's it. We're just telling them to fill out, and no one's ever actually taught them how to fill it out, or they showed them once and that was it. So with an eMOD, let's say you're going to install ductwork and you're a mechanical contractor. It's going to say install ductwork as one possible task. Here are some possible steps, possible hazards, and possible safe plans to mitigate those hazards, just to point people in the right direction. So we're not a form builder. We're not just outlining, we didn't just digitize a form that's already out there. We're trying to make it proactive to suggest things that you may not have considered, or if you didn't know how to fill it out, this is the type of content we're looking for.
I would think that would be something that the insurance companies would be very interested in.
Yes, and so we've actually started to partner with insurance companies. Yeah.
I know when I started partnering, I was asked to write my first book by them, and they had a product that paid for the partnering. And they found that they saved 75% over what they had been paying.
Yeah. Wow. We had a general contractor just show us that they saved 42% in their workers' comp last year. There's big savings there. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about what made you decide to go into construction in the first place.
So, daughter of a contractor, knew I always wanted to be in the industry. And to be really transparent and honest, I am very dyslexic. Construction was a hands-on, something I could understand and visually see in the field. I knew I was going to learn better that way. And I know I came out of school, I could have gone the project management route or the field route. And I knew I was going to excel a lot faster in the field because I wasn't going to be sitting there reading submittals and trying to visualize how things were being installed in the field. I was going to be asking a foreman or a crew, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? I can't tell you how many times I sit out there just with an iPad being like, oh, that's what that looks like. Okay. I just kept going, I knew that that's where I belonged as soon as I kind of jumped into this industry.
So what made you decide to go into architecture?
My dad was a contractor growing up, and so I was always on job sites with him. And growing up, I didn't think I wanted to be part of that. But so I did a couple years in architecture, didn't finish my undergrad in it, and just realized that the design side, although very interesting, wasn't for me, but it actually worked out really well in my career. As I was running work, I could draw up an RFI with a potential solution in CAD really quick and suggest it to an architect. So
that's what I'm thinking. They want one of you. Yeah.
I mean, it was definitely had its benefits. It's just, I thought I love to see an actual project from start to finish. And honestly, I fell in love working with the field. The people in the field were probably my favorite part of it.
I hear you. I just think people that work in construction are the salt of the earth. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what was your path then from, start from when you started and kind of, I want everyone to kind of understand the path you take as you didn't start out as the superintendent.
I did not. I worked for a contractor that they called it a core program. So you did 3 months in estimating, 3 months in safety. You bounce through all the different categories. And I fell in love with the field. As soon as I finished my master's, I was an assistant superintendent right away. Luckily, growing up, coming out of construction, I kind of got the gist of it. I can't say that I didn't FaceTime my dad many times on the job site being like, what am I looking at? But yeah, I started to run my own work within the first year, actually. And I was very lucky. But I will say it was also very difficult. I looked very young. And I was probably the daughter, children's age of some of the guys that I was working with, which made it very difficult in the field. But I went down and nothing was going to stop me. I just had this crazy fire in me as soon as I stepped on a job site.
That's awesome. Oh, that's so awesome. Well, you're just where you're meant to be.
Yeah.
So how long did you do that? You were with several companies doing superintendent? or
I was a superintendent for about 10 years. I was assistant superintendent for maybe a year. And then I really just jumped right in. For about 10 years, I was a super, both on the East Coast and on the West Coast. And then the last kind of year that I was running work, or 2 years I was running work, I was working on eMOD kind of behind the scenes. We were testing it internally at the contractor I was working with as well. And, once it actually started to gain some legs, it was the time to decide, do I want to keep running work? Where do I see my career? And this, it doesn't matter, honestly, if you're in construction or in tech, there's not enough women on either side. And I've learned, I didn't realize I was going from one male dominated industry to another, and trying to raise capital is a whole nother battle as a female in this industry, especially in construction tech. But it's been, apparently I like a good battle.
well, you're not faint of heart, that's for sure.
No.
So with your journey to heading up a tech company now, but it is still all completely related to all of your expertise, both in your training in architecture, construction management, and as being a superintendent, knowing how to really put things together.
Yeah.
That sounds like,
it's funny.
A winner.
Yeah. I always say, people ask me how the transition's been from construction to the tech side. And, I have all my sticky notes across my wall here. It's like I have a schedule. I'm not building out someone's new office space this time around. I'm running for the next sprint. I'm figuring out the next deployment. I'm, figuring out when we're going to onboard people, which is like essentially bringing on new subs. So it's just a different type of project.
Yeah, but you have a skill set that you can transfer. So I think that's a really important thing for everyone to understand too, that while you may start in one job, you may evolve into other jobs, but those skills will still be with you and you can take them other places. Because in construction, I still think technology is just like a supplier to construction. It's still part of the value chain of creating good construction, whether you're in planning, design, construction, startup, maintenance, you're a supplier. I think it's awesome.
It's
So
all
what's
communication.
it like now to be a CEO?
Oh my goodness. It's exciting. It's exhausting. It's a rush. I love it. It's like being a superintendent all over again. A little less dirty. The hours, those early mornings aren't nearly as bad. I don't miss those 4 a.m. Job site hours, but it's a push. It's a big push. It's interesting. Prior to this, I'd be given trade contractors on a job site, and now I'm going out trying to hire, and it has been a very big change for me.
That's awesome. So how long have you been into the eMOD?
So eMOD's been around for about 3.5, 4 years now. We didn't fully go to market though till last year. And so I didn't step in as our CEO until last January. So I'm almost at the 1 year mark.
1 year. Okay. So
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah.
So what has your experience been seeing out in the field now as being a woman working in construction, both in the field and now as a supplier to, I'm assuming you're looking to target construction companies.
Yeah.
So what's your experience been like?
I've had a variety of experiences. I've had the guys that, want to take me under their wing and they want to show me and they want to teach me. And to those men that have done that for me, I can't thank them enough. I don't think I would have gotten nearly as far as I did without them. But there's also been the complete opposite. The men on the job site that don't want to see you succeed, that don't think you belong there. And young in my career, I really felt like I had to prove myself. And I think I gave up actually a bit of myself in order to prove myself to them, and to prove myself to the industry, and also to prove myself to myself that I could actually do what I thought I could do. And so it was no easy feat, but the good days outweighed the bad. And I had a moment, I was working for Turner Construction at the time. We had an all-female team, project manager, superintendent, project engineer, and I had a contractor walk up to us to tell us that it was the most intimidating job site he's ever been on. And it was such a great moment because I was like, now you know how I feel every time I walk onto a job site that's full of men. And maybe I'm lucky that there's one or two other women on the job site. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hopefully over time, when we have a 500 million construction jobs unfilled, we'll get some more women that are jumping out and seeing what a great place it can be. What do you see as barriers to bringing women into construction?
You know, of course, all of this starts when you're young. I don't know. Have you ever seen that commercial where the teacher asks the children to draw? I think it's a firefighter, a pilot, and a surgeon.
I haven't seen that, so tell me about it.
Okay. So the teacher asks a group of students to do this. They're all young. I think it's like 60 of the students all draw male firefighters, pilots, and surgeons, and then only like 5 or 6 of them draw females. And at the end of the commercial, they end up bringing in all of these women that are presented as that. And the faces of just these children, their jaws are dropped. The girls are smiling. It's this whole like gender stereotype is started at such a young age that I don't think a lot of women even know that they can go into this industry. I don't think they understand that this is even an option. Mm-hmm. I just want to grab them and be like, I don't swing a hammer at a job site. I'm not dragging ladders around. My job is so much more than that. And it takes so much to run a business and to run a construction site that there are so many more options than just using the tools.
Yeah. And women can use the tools too. And
if they want to.
Now, yeah. Your story reminds me of a dear friend of mine who wrote a whole bunch of different books, but she was the first woman to ever be the head of the London Chamber of Commerce. And then she was the head of Girl Scouts all over Europe. And she was so taken back when she was working with all these girls in the Girl Scouts when she was asked, "You mean a girl could be president of the United States?" And so she wrote another book about, yes, a girl can be president.
Yeah. But and like, unless you have that person to look up to, or you've seen it yourself, you don't know that that's even an option.
Yeah, you really, how can you? Yeah. So if you had a magic wand and you could wave it to make any changes in the construction industry that would make it easier for women to come, what would you do?
Oh gosh. Just have them, I don't like, just make it so that when they step foot on a job site, they feel like they belong there, that they don't feel like they stand out. I think that's something that I struggled with, is that it didn't matter if it was a superintendent meeting or a job site meeting or even, a building meeting where all the superintendents or contractors had to go to. I was always the only female. And so all I wanted to do was blend in, and all I did was stick out. And so I felt like I was always under a microscope. So if I did something wrong, I was the only female that did something wrong. If I didn't show up, I was the only female that was missing. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like if I could wave a wand and a female could step into that position and just feel like she belonged. If she wants to stand out, let her stand out. But if she just wants to blend in, then let her blend in.
Well, you probably want to do both.
Yeah. I mean, yes, you want to stand out for a certain reason.
Microscope, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I've been in construction for 40 years, and believe me, there were few and far between women around, and I was always the only woman in the room. However, I did find that it really worked to my advantage most of the time because the old rules didn't work. And so I got to set the new rules.
Yeah, that's true.
So what is your parting advice to contractors and builders, designers, owners who want to, engage and bring more women into the industry and fill some of these 500 million positions that are open?
Honestly, I have a message for the women that are out there. The ones that are struggling to find a voice and a place, and they just don't feel like their organization that they're currently at is the right fit for them. I would say keep looking. There are good organizations out there that want to see you succeed, that want to help you get to where you want to be. And if you don't speak up, if you don't do uncomfortable things, and if you don't ask yourself, what's the worst that's going to happen, you're going to be stuck. Put yourself out there and figure out what the options are, because what's the worst that happens? They say no. Maybe you get fired, but was that the right organization for you if you do? I've kind of lived my career by what's the worst that happens. I moved across the country. What's the worst that happens? I go home. I jump into the field. What's the worst that happens? I go back into the office. It's not as bad. I know it's a lot easier said than done, but I've done so many uncomfortable things, and I've asked so many questions and spoken up so loud. I've done it for myself. I've done it for the future generation. I have she's now a superintendent, but she was my intern. And she looked up to me, and I was the only role model she had in that position. And it's just remember that you're doing it for the future generation, so that we're not having the same conversation in 10, 15 years of how do we get more women into the industry. We're already in the industry.
Yeah. And it's normal.
Exactly.
Yeah. I was just talking with Mary Tykert on another episode from Tykert Construction, and she was saying how she's finding that as she's recruiting the folks out of college now, they have less and less of the concern of whether you're a male or female.
Yeah,
it just isn't really there. But I do think your point too about, I worked with thousands of different companies over the years on 4,000 projects. And I can tell you that there are differences between companies, and you just got to find one that fits for you.
Yeah.
There's just thousands and thousands of places to be.
Yeah, exactly.
So how can people find you, and how can they find eMOD?
Definitely find me on LinkedIn. And you can find eMOD at emodsafety.com.
And we'll put that in the show notes, so everyone will have that. And I so appreciate you being here and being a role model for the next generation. And I hope that our paths cross some more times.
That's wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Kaitlin.